Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I'm gonna do something that I've never done before, and that's restore one of these old Lane Cedar chests. Now, I actually shouldn't say restore because my plan is to completely transform the look of this thing. Now, can I do it? I don't know. Let's find out together. Alright guys, so let's take a closer look at this cedar chest. As you can see, this thing has been well used over the years, as evidenced by the many scratches across the top. Don't you worry about those scratches though, we'll take care of that a little later on in the video. Now, it was a little hard to tell at first with the dark stain, but upon further inspection, it looks like this cedar chest was wrapped in a very thin layer of pine veneering on 3 of the outside faces, while the back face appeared to have cedar veneering. Maybe. Well, let's just say it looked different than the other 3. That's all I know. You're probably going to see this guy show up a lot in this video because he has this thing about anytime I'm working on the ground, he thinks I'm on the ground because I want to pet him. And I do. I mean, why else would I be on the ground? Anyways, back to the cedar chest. Now this thing has some like louver style detailing on the front with some hardware that is purely for decoration purposes. If I was going for a complete restoration of this piece, then I would probably leave this front face in place and maybe just change out the hardware. However, I really want to change up the look of this thing, so I'm going to be removing this front face and designing something different. Now, as a Virginia girl myself, I have to say that I really enjoy digging a little deeper into the history of the Lane Furniture Company. Now, this company, which was founded in 1912, spent the first few years of its existence manufacturing pine ammunition boxes for the federal government during World War I. After the war, the company created what some might consider one of the greatest furniture marketing campaigns ever. This marketing campaign would last for decades after the war, and that was the idea of the Hope Chest. Now, what is a hope chest really? This was a term I myself was familiar with, but I didn't fully understand the idea behind it. Basically, a hope chest is a cedar chest that was purchased for a young woman of the time for which they could store clothing or home furnishings in anticipation of marriage. The idea can basically be summed up in the company's tagline, the gift that starts the home. Now, the company's advertisements really hit their peak during World War II when they would create ads targeted toward GIs about to depart for war, encouraging them to purchase a Lane Cedar chest for their sweethearts they were leaving behind. Their successful marketing campaign would carry on for the next few decades as more and more Lane Cedar chests were purchased. Ultimately, the company was taken over in 1987 and production was moved overseas, with the last Lane Cedar chest manufactured in Virginia taking place in 2001. Now, this brings me to the history of this cedar chest in particular. This Lane Hope chest actually belongs to my mother-in-law. According to some paperwork I found inside the chest, it looks like she purchased this chest from Vans Airport Furniture in Kalamazoo, Michigan in December of 1978, right before she got married. She paid $189 for this thing, which was on sale from $239. That's a lot of money for that time. Actually, that's still a lot of money. Now, she's held onto this chest for 46 years because it's one of the first things that she bought for herself and it holds sentimental value. So when she came to me and asked if I could make it look nice again, I was more than happy to. I asked if she wanted me to restore it to its original design, and she basically gave me full creative liberty to do whatever I thought would make it look good. Well, thank you for trusting me. Let's see what we can do. Alright, so after looking at this thing, I've decided that I'm not a big fan of this style of base. I feel like it just kind of dates the piece. So my plan is to flip this thing over and see if I can get it removed. flipped the chest upside down, I discovered the style and serial numbers listed on the bottom. Now, the style number reveals the particular model style for this chest, and the serial number reveals the date it was manufactured. Now, oftentimes this number will be read backwards, so in this case, it looks like this Hope chest was manufactured on August 15th, 1977. The remaining number indicates that this chest was built in Plant 2. Now, I'm really glad that I decided to replace the base for this chest because, as you can see, it was in a really brittle state. Parts of it were pretty damaged and falling off with just a quick swipe of my hand. To get this base removed, I just had to unscrew a couple of screws and then it popped right off. So I thought removing this front face would probably be the hardest part of this, and it turns out I was right. This is not coming off very easily. Unfortunately, I think it's glued on in small sections and everything's just kind of breaking off in little pieces rather than in large chunks, so that's making it a little bit difficult for me. I think this is probably going to take me a little while, but I do think it was the right call. I just felt like I would not be able to get the finish off very well with this style front face. I am going to be building a brand new front face that's going to go on top of this, so that'll cover up some of these unsightly sections here once I get all of this off. So I just got to keep chipping away at it, and hopefully we'll be able to get this off with a few casualties. So I have to admit that when I started removing this front face, I was feeling a little bit guilty. My mother-in-law had trusted me with this special piece of furniture to her, and here I was butchering it into a million pieces. How's that old saying go? Sometimes things have to fall apart before they can fall back together. Yeah, we can apply that cliche quote to this situation because I know, it looks bad. But I'm gonna make it nice again, I promise. Or, well, I hope. Let's just keep going. Alright guys, so I'm doing a little work on this top now, and I've decided that before I start sanding this thing down, what I want to do is use a little bit of stripper and try to get as much of this existing finish off as I can. There's nothing like doing a little bit of stripping that really makes you question your choices. Oh, I'm referring to the smell. This stuff is pretty gnarly. I don't know what you guys were thinking of. Anyways, I ended up having to apply a couple of coats of the stripper to get all of the finish off. There was one technique that I probably should have tried here, but I decided to do zero research before I started stripping this piece of furniture. That technique was laying down some saran wrap over top of the stripper so that it doesn't dry out too quickly. This might have allowed me to do fewer coats of this stuff in order to get all of that finish off. Ultimately, I was able to get all of the finish removed, and I could leave my stripping days behind me. Well, at least for now. Once I had the finish removed, all that was left behind was the stain, so I spent some time sanding that color off. Next up, I got to work on building a new face frame for the cedar chest since the old one was now in a bucket somewhere in my shop in about 1 million pieces. So I needed to start from scratch here. Basically, I just cut some pieces to size to create a couple different rectangles. I have a plan here, even though it might not look like it yet. Just stick with me and you'll see. Part of that plan entails rabbiting out part of this face frame from the back side. Now, anytime I plan on doing that, I like to join my boards together with wooden dowels rather than screws because, well, I'd much rather risk hitting a wooden dowel with my router than a metal screw. That's just common sense, right? So what you see me doing here is setting up my pieces to be drilled for those wooden dowels. And I can already guess what you're thinking right now. I bet you're thinking, gosh, I wonder how she's doing that. Pretty good guess, huh? Well, lucky for you, you don't have to wonder too hard because I already have a video on my channel that goes over all the details of using this dowel jig in particular, and I'll leave it linked below for you because, well, I'm nice like that. You guys ever just have an idea in your head for something, but you have no clue if it's actually going to work out? Yeah, that's basically what I have going on with this face frame right now at the moment for this chest. I've got two of the sections already glued up right now. There will be a section in the middle that will connect these two, but I'm gonna hold off on assembling that for right now. I sort of have this idea in my head of what I want this face frame to look like, but I have no idea if it's actually gonna look good once I get all the pieces together. But I'm just gonna forge ahead and keep working on it, and hopefully this idea that I have in my head is gonna look good once I get it all together. Right now I can't say that it does, but there's still a lot of additional steps I have to do to get it to the point where it'll look good. Now, basically this face frame, like I said, I've got these two side sections here, and basically they're just two rectangles on each section, and it's very boring at the moment to me. It's giving shaker style. I've done plenty of shaker style in the past. I want to try to do something different with this face frame. So I want to make this look a little funkier, and to do that, I've just basically cut out one of these little corner radiuses that I'm going to place inside each of my rectangles in each of my four corners. That'll give it more of a round look, something a little bit different. But again, I have no clue if this is actually gonna look good once I have it all together. So let's just see. Let's see what happens. So I almost broke out the old protractor from 4th grade math class for this, but I figured, nah, let's just use some random item in my shop instead. So paint can it is. I just traced a radius that I liked. Nothing technical here. Once I had my radius traced out, I took it over to the scroll saw to cut it out. Now I could have also used the bandsaw here, but the scroll saw was capable of cutting through this pine. Once I had one piece cut, I just used that piece to trace my shape for all the other pieces. And boy, were there a lot of other pieces. 20 to be exact. What was I thinking? Now for these pieces, I cut them out proud of my trace line, and then I carefully sanded them to the line using a spindle sander. Remember just a second ago when I mentioned there were 20 of these things? Yeah, that took some time. But it wasn't all bad because it gave me time to use my new tool. That's right, I got a new tool, guys. So I'm actually getting ready to build a project with my dad, and he thought this rigid sander would come in handy for that project, so he gifted it to me. What I didn't realize when it showed up was just how much it would come in handy for this project. So Dad, if you're watching this, which I hope you are, thank you. I have a feeling this tool will be a great addition to the workshop. Next, it was time to get all my little corner radius pieces attached to the face frame. To do this, I just applied some glue to the edges and then clamped them in place using those little cutoff pieces from when I cut them at the scroll saw. I just made sure to number my pieces so I knew which pieces went back together. So maybe I won't win an award for the world's smoothest glue up here, but hey, it got the job done. Alright guys, so I've been making a little bit more progress on this front face here. I've got all of those corner radiuses glued in place, and that did take me a couple of days because I could only glue up one section at a time. But these two side panels are done. I still have that middle section to do, but I'll take care of that in a little bit. Now I want to show you what the next step that I'm going to work on for these front face panels is going to be. Okay, so here's what my plan is. I want to take some of this cane webbing that I have here, and I want to inset it inside each of these sections that I've cut out. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to need to use a rabbiting bit on my router and just run it along the back of my piece and rabbit out a 1/2 inch section that I can attach that cane webbing in, and then I'll also add a 1/4 inch sheet of plywood as well, and then I'll get that attached in my rabbited out section. Now, as you can see, I've already rabbited out one of these sections here, and I gotta say, it actually turned out okay. I was incredibly nervous when I did this because I didn't know if those corner radiuses that I glued in were just gonna break off or what, but this one turned out okay. Let's see if we can get through the other 3 without any casualties. Now for this, I set my router bit to the depth I would need to accommodate that plywood and cane webbing, and then I just removed it all in one pass. With this softer pine, that wasn't an issue, but if I was using a hardwood here, then I would probably do this a little bit at a time. Also, an important reminder that I have to remind myself every time is that when you're rabbiting out the interior of something like I'm doing here, then you just want to move the router in the opposite direction that you normally would. Look at that spindle sander coming in clutch again. Now, this step is where I was really able to refine the shape of these cutout sections for my face frame. Before, they were still a little boxy, for lack of a better word, and the spindle sander allowed me to make them look more like a fluid circle, or whatever type of shape this is. Honestly, I'm just throwing out adjectives here that sound good. It's hard to describe really, but let's just say it was starting to shape up. Yeah, that'll do. Next, I got that middle section attached to my side pieces. Now, I had put this off for as long as I could so that it was easier to manage, but the install was similar to my side panels with one key difference. Now, I was able to use pocket hole screws for attaching here because I had to make these pieces a little bit wider to accommodate the location of the lock for the cedar chest. So that meant I had enough room to drill pocket holes without the router coming anywhere close to those screws. And just in case you missed me doing these steps the first 2 times, here I am doing them again. Now, I was avoiding assembling this face frame into one unit just because I thought it would be harder to manage. What I didn't realize, though, was that apparently it also became invisible to dogs. I mean, who knew? I'm really gonna have to watch Murphy around this thing. Well, I'm not going to say that I regret making these sections rounded because I think they look so cool. However, I will say that if I would have just made them square, it would have been much easier when it comes to fitting these back panels in place. It's going to be a little trickier getting back panels that are going to match these exact shapes, but you know what? I can do it. Sure, it can be tempting to take the easy route when it comes to building. But why do that when instead you can design something way more complex that requires like 20 additional steps and takes 4 times as long? I guess that's just the price you pay for trying to be all creative. At least that's what I tell myself as I power through the next few steps. Now, since I couldn't just measure for my back panels, I had to go and get all creative again and find a way to cut these pieces to size. Now, I'm sure there's probably a better way to do this, but in the moment, this was the best I could come up with. I just taped a bunch of pieces of plywood to the back of my face frame and then traced the outline of my cutouts onto that plywood. Unfortunately, that's not quite good enough though, is it? Because I did rabbet out the back of my face frame, remember? So I need to add about a 1/2 inch all around my outline to accommodate for that. To do this, I just took a ruler and measured a 1/2 inch from my outline and did this many times until I had the size of shape I was after. Once that tedious step was over, I could take my pieces to the scroll saw and cut them out. Thankfully, these panels don't need to be 100% perfect because they will never be seen from the backside once the face frame is attached, so no one will ever know they don't fit perfectly. Not even you guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, look right here.
After installing those back panels, which by the way were a perfect fit, the last step I took care of for this face frame before prepping for paint was rounding over all the edges with a 1/8 inch roundover bit. Alright, I'm gonna shift gears here for a minute. The face frame is looking pretty good, so I want to move on to making a new base for the cedar chest. Now, this is a pretty simple base design. I started by attaching my side stretcher pieces to the legs. I did taper these legs on 2 sides. If you're curious how to taper legs like this, then I'll link a recent video that I did where I show you how you can throw together a simple tapering jig for making some quick tapers at the table saw. Once my side pieces were put together, I just connected those with some longer front and back stretchers, and I tied everything together using wood glue and pocket hole screws. I also added in a couple of additional cross supports to help strengthen everything up. And with that, this base is now done. Let's move on to prepping all of the pieces for paint. My plan was always to paint the base of the cedar chest and leave the top some sort of natural wood. However, as I was sanding the top, I discovered that some of the adhesive was starting to show through. What I thought was a solid top ended up being a very thin layer of pine veneering, which had basically mostly been sanded through at this point. So I had to call an audible and decided to paint the top as well. Not exactly what I had in mind, but sometimes you just have to keep a project moving forward, even if that means switching things up. I even switched up the original paint color from black to something way fancier sounding, Oasis Blue. I sprayed a couple coats of this Benjamin Moore's advanced paint and gave it a couple of days to dry before handling it. So I got mostly everything painted now. I've gone ahead and painted this front face, and now it's time to attach the cane webbing inside of here. I think I can honestly say that this might be the first time I've ever filmed inside of the bathroom. If you're wondering what I'm doing in here, that's a valid question. I've got this tub full of some warm water right now, and my plan is I'm gonna soak this cane webbing in some of this warm water for about 30 minutes before I install it. Now, by soaking it in this water, it should loosen it up a little bit and make it more flexible. Right now, it's kind of really hard to work with. So by soaking it in this warm water, like I said, it should hopefully become a little bit easier to maneuver, and that way I can get it installed a little bit easier. So I'm just gonna throw this in here, let it soak. All right, I've got the cane webbing out from its bath. Gonna dry it off a little with a towel. Not gonna lie, this smells a little bit like a barn after I got it wet. I don't know, I guess that wet straw smell, or I don't know what this stuff is. I guess it's, I don't know if it's straw cane, I guess, but all right. So first thing I'm gonna do is kind of line it up like I want it. I'm just gonna add some staples. Alright, those are just sort of to hold it in place for right now. Guys, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm kind of just figuring this out as I go. So this is by no means the best technique, but I'm winging it. If I could do it all over again, which obviously it's too late for that now, I probably would have made my rabbited out section a little bit wider because I'm having a little bit of a hard time sinking staples in because I don't have a lot of room to work with that 1/2 inch. If I would have made that rabbited out section just a little bit wider, it would just made it a little bit easier, I think, for getting these staples in place. But we're gonna power through and see if we can get this knocked out. Go on record and say that I literally hate this right now. It's frustrating. Wow. I made that so much harder than it needed to be. Well, I was bound to figure out how to do this eventually. On the very first one that I didn't pull the cane webbing quite tight enough, so it's bubbling out a little bit. I'll have to go back and fix that one. But I finally dialed it in, and basically I just oversized when I cut the cane webbing to size, I oversized it a little bit, and then I just spent some time pulling it as tight as I can get it, and then attaching it with some staples, and that seems to be keeping it from bubbling out a little bit. So I just got to keep chipping away at this, and I've got 3 more of these things to attach now. Wow, was that a pain in the butt? It does look pretty cool though, so I guess it was worth it. Although I might need to take a little bit of a break before I decide it's a good idea to work with cane webbing again. Anyways, now it's time to get this front face attached to the front of the cedar chest. To get this attached, I just applied a hefty amount of wood glue and clamped it to the front of the chest. To drill out a hole in the face frame for the lock to pass through. Now, from what I understand, there's a little bit of controversy in regards to these Lane Cedar Chest locks. Apparently, the locks on chests built pre-1987 are a bit of a safety concern because they cannot be unlocked from the inside, so if a child was to get inside, they wouldn't be able to get out on their own. These locks were actually recalled in 1996, and for a while you could contact the company and they would send you a replacement lock. However, it looks like the company stopped doing that a few years ago. I'm going to leave the lock for now, but I'll inform my mother-in-law of the issue, and if she wants to remove it, she can do so. Next, I got my new base attached to the bottom of the cedar chest. To attach this base, I'm going to be using some of these Z-clips. I just marked where the clips need to go, and I cut out some slots on the base using my biscuit cutter. I also had to add some figure 8 clips for the areas on the sides where my biscuit cutter was just too big to cut. Lastly, I got the top reinstalled to the base using the hinges I removed earlier. Let me just remind you guys what this Lane Cedar chest looked like before I got a hold of it. Before, it was a piece that definitely showed signs of its age, and I think I was able to do a pretty good job of freshening this thing up while giving it a more mid-century modern inspired look. Now, did I make it look better? Well, I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Alexa, roll that reveal footage. I have to say this cedar chest transformation was pretty fun. It was really cool to be able to breathe new life into a piece that's special to a person that's special to me. Also, I spent a lot of time building new things, so it was about time that I tried my hand at something old. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me tackle this cedar chest. If you did, I'd love for you to like and share this video with others who might enjoy it too. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you for my next build. Bye.
Oh, look at that.
What do you think?
Oh my goodness.
It's totally different.
I love it. Look at this fancy stuff here.
Yeah,
you built
this
a
is
new
the-
base. Oh, is
yeah,
this your
so-
legs?
These are the legs.
Oh, a whole new base.
So it's a
up
little bit
higher.
more like mid-century modern looking now,
Yes.
I think. I hope you like
wow.
it.
I do. I do. Good job.
Thank you. Thanks for trusting me to do that. It was fun. I had a lot of fun doing that.
I love it.